Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Mr. A back again. I know I've taken a few days off, few-day hiatus. We've had a crazy week here in the Aguirre house, so lots of changes this week, and I'm ready to get back to it. We only have a few readings left. It looks like we have only two more matchups in the first round. We have Faithful Friend versus Whoosh, and Game Day versus The Babe and I. Which is what we're going to read today, is The Babe and I versus Game Day. So those are going to be our matchups for today. Babe and I and Game Day are today's matchups. Let's go ahead and get started. Don't forget to vote. One thing I forgot to say, don't forget to vote. Make sure you vote in the comments, or if you have my Instagram or Facebook account like some of my personal friends do, go ahead and comment there. I'll still count your votes. It works just the same. Has worked just fine this whole time, so let's keep doing that. All right, let's go. All right, so our first book today is Game Day by Tiki and Rondé Barber. Remember I told you last time these are ex-NFL players. You can look them up if you don't believe me. And again, it is an AR book. AR quiz. Take those AR quizzes. My students, I really hope you're getting those done. All right, here we go. It was the play Coach Mike liked to call old bread and butter. Tiki and Rondé knew it by heart. It went like this. The quarterback took the snap and looked left as both ends broke to their left. Then, with a quick spin, the quarterback pitched the ball back to Tiki, who followed his brother to the opposite side. From there, if everything clicked, it was off to the races. And this time, everything did click. The defensive end ran toward the quarterback. Staying behind Rondé, Tiki sprinted into the clear. The goal line was 60 yards away. At the 20-yard line, two defensive backs closed in on Tiki. Rondé, leading the way, dove at the knees of the first defender, bounced into the second. As all three players went down, Tiki leaped high and kept on going. Touchdown, Vikings. Tiki Barber, number 22, scores, the announcer called out. Rondé saw his whole team converge on the end zone, and he sat up, made his way to the milling crowd. He was limping a little. The block he had thrown had somehow hurt his ankle. Tiki! Tiki! All the Vikings crowded around Tiki and cheered. Even some parents had come down onto the field. Rondé saw his mother looking at Tiki and waving. He wondered, if I hadn't made that block, Tiki wouldn't have scored. Did anyone even notice that? Coach Mike came up beside Rondé and patted him on the shoulder. Nice game, the coach said. Then he added, that twin brother of yours, he's amazing. That's the 7th long touchdown run this season. Yeah, Rondé said, with his head down. You okay? The coach asked. Yeah, I'm okay, Rondé said in a quiet voice. He didn't feel like talking to anyone as he hobbled across the field. It was Tuesday afternoon, and the twins were in their room doing homework. Rondé suddenly looked up from his book and said, Guess how long it took Lewis and Clark to go from the Mississippi River to the Pacific Ocean? I don't know, Tiki said. A couple weeks? A couple weeks? It took almost 2 years, Rondé grinned. That's what you know. Well, if two guys row all day... It wasn't just 2 guys, Rondé answered. No way. He pointed to his book. It took almost 40 to get there. A whole bunch. The twins' mother popped her head into the room. Surprise, she whispered. Someone's here to talk with you. A reporter with the Roanoke newspaper was doing a feature story about the city's Pee Wee League. There was a photographer with him, too. Are you Tiki? The reporter asked, looking down at Rondé. Rondé shook his head. He pointed at his twin brother. The reporter turned to Tiki and said, Your coach tells me you've already scored 7 touchdowns in 4 games. What's your secret? Tiki, like Rondé, felt a little funny talking to adults. He pawed the floor with one foot. Then in a low voice he said, I just keep on running. I do my best, and the game happens around me. The reporter went on talking to Tiki. Those are some long runs, 60, 70 yards. Do you get out of breath? Sometimes, Tiki smiled shyly. "But I just keep running." The reporter turned to the photographer. "Let's take his picture outside holding the football." They turned to go outside, while Rondé stayed behind. But then the boy's mother called out, "How about taking both boys' picture together? They're a team. Rondé is Tiki's best blocker." "Sure," said the reporter. "Great idea." Later, as the boy's mother cooked dinner, Rondé mumbled in a soft voice to her, "Guys who block and stuff like that, nobody notices. People just notice the guy who scores touchdowns." His mother was silent for a moment. Rondé went on, "I'm fast too. At the tryouts this fall, I was as fast as Tiki. Why don't I carry the ball more?" His mother seemed to be thinking. Then she popped a funny question. "Who cooks dinner here?" Rondé looked up. "Why is Mom talking about dinner now?" "You do," he answered. "And if I were to stop?" his mother asked. Rondé made a face and thought, "We'd probably be eating peanut butter all the time." But before he could say that, his mother jumped in with an answer. "I'll tell you. We'd all starve. And who carries out the garbage each night?" "Me and Tiki." "Right on, Buster. And if you guys didn't?" Rondé smiled. "We'd all have to walk around like this," his mom said as she pinched her nose. She laughed. "It's a good thing we work together here, isn't it?" she reminded Rondé. Saturday arrived, but Rondé's ankle was still slightly swollen. He sat on the bench in his street clothes next to Coach Mike. "Can I maybe play a little in the second half?" he pleaded. "No way, Jose," the coach finally said firmly. "Besides, next week's game is the big one. Let's get you ready for that." Tiki trotted over to the bench, out of breath from pregame warm-ups. "Hey," Coach Mike said, laughing and pointing to Rondé. "Let's win one for your brother here." The Vikings crowded around the coach and Rondé. "Yeah, yeah," they all yelled. Tiki and Rondé gave each other a high five. Tiki said, "Rest up. We really need you next week. Today, I'm going to break a couple long ones for you, Rondé. Watch me." Yet, easier said than done. Again and again, Tiki cut through the line or dodged a slow-footed lineman, only to find himself trapped by 2 or 3 defensive backs who hemmed him in and drove him out of bounds. A few times, Rondé leaped to his feet and called out, "Go, Tiki, go!" But it didn't do any good. "Cheering helps," Coach Mike said, "but not as much as a few solid blocks." Then he added softly, "He's missing his main man." Rondé looked over at Coach, wondering, is Coach Mike talking about me? The game was tied after 3 quarters. Finally, in the 3rd quarter, the Vikings slowly ground their way to the winning touchdown. But where was Tiki's long gainers? Not today, not today. It was the following Wednesday, practice day before their big game with the toughest team in the league, the Knights. Rondé felt like a colt who had been let out of the barn. He hopped up and down to test his ankle. He led the team in the warm-up run around the track. He loved the breeze on his face and the feel of the cinders under his toes. Coach Mike told Rondé and Tiki to take turns catching and returning punts. As Tiki watched from the bench, Rondé caught 10 high spiraling punts in a row without dropping one. And after each catch, he zigzagged and sprinted downfield for 20 yards and then came back. When it was Tiki's turn, Rondé went to the sideline. Paco, Rondé and Tiki's best friend, jogged over to where Rondé was sitting. Paco was heavier than the twins and slower. He played on the offensive line and was a solid blocker. "Yo, Rond." "Hey, Pac." Paco sat down next to Rondé, breathing heavily. "Hitting those blocking dummies is hard work," he said. Rondé looked at Paco. "Pac, you ever get tired of just blocking for other guys?" "Sometimes, but I figure someone's got to do it. And when I do it okay, it feels good. And when we win, it feels really good." Yeah, I wish I could run fast like you and Tiki, but I can't. So, Rondé and Paco were quiet for a moment. Paco went on. My dad always says this funny thing. He says, you gotta play your best with the cards you're dealt. You know, like... A loud whistle interrupted their conversation. Practice was over, but Coach Mike was calling. Rondé and Tiki, over here for a few minutes. We've got a new trick play for Sunday, on the double. Rondé jumped to his feet. What was this about? Later, he called back to Paco as he ran off. Saturday was overcast. The wind swirled and died down and swirled again. The Knights were wearing shiny black uniforms. The gray sky seemed to make the players look even bigger. Parents stood behind the Vikings bench and filled the bleachers. Rondé looked over and spotted his mother. She smiled, gave him a thumbs up, and mouthed the words she always used to say, "Play proud." The Vikings gathered around Coach Mike, then jogged onto the field. The boys were psyched up as the start of the game neared. The game was expected to be close, and at halftime, it was tied. Only once, late in the third quarter, did Tiki, behind a great block from his brother, break away for a long touchdown run. But the Knights' bigger size began to show. Slowly, yard by yard, they drove to a touchdown and then edged ahead. What now? The Vikings were on their own 40-yard line. It was starting to drizzle, and the clock was running down. The Vikings' blue uniforms seemed smeared with dirt. Rondé sprinted to the sidelines, listened to the coach, and then raced back. He ducked into the huddle to announce the play. Coach Mike says, he looked at Tiki, it's time for old bread and butter, +1. Jason, the quarterback, glanced up. Huh? He mumbled. What's +1? Tiki broke in. Don't worry, it's the same old play with something added. Let's do it, Paco called out as the team headed for the line of scrimmage. Jason took the snap. He faked a pass to the left and wheeled around. He shoveled the ball back to Tiki, who veered outside the on-rushing end. Tiki threaded his way downfield behind his brother, but 3 defensive backs were closing in. Then something strange happened. Rondé seemed to miss his block and slide sideways past the defenders. The 3 tacklers, sure of themselves now, headed for Tiki. It seemed like it was all over. In a split second, Tiki leaped into the air and spun around, and with all his strength he lobbed a cross-field lateral pass to Rondé. The football wobbled and dipped, but Rondé, without breaking stride, bent forward and snatched it clean just above his shoes. He tucked the football under his arm and was off. Rondé ran faster and faster, with his eyes on the goalposts, the 30-yard line, the 20, the 10. Touchdown, Rondé Barber, the announcer called out in a loud voice. The Vikings win, 20-15. Rondé stood in the end zone and looked back. The whole team was racing downfield toward him. Tiki was there first. Together, he and Rondé held the ball high in the air. The Vikings gathered around. Many hands reached up to touch the winning football. You did it, Tiki shouted at Rondé. Rondé laughed. No, bro, you did it. Then he stopped. No, we both did it. Then he stopped himself again. No, we all did it. Hooray, Vikings. The end. Now for book number 2, The Babe and I, by David A. Adler. And don't forget to vote for your favorite. Only one of these books is going to move on. For my birthday, I was hoping my parents would give me a bicycle. They only gave me a dime. I was disappointed, but not surprised. It was 1932, in the midst of the Great Depression, and millions of people were out of work. We were lucky. My father had a job. But we never seemed to have much money. Where we lived, in the Bronx, New York, everyone was poor. Happy birthday! Dad said when I walked him outside. I watched him go off, carrying his briefcase and smiling. My neighbor Jacob was tossing a ball and catching it. He threw it to me and shouted, "Give me a high one! I'm Babe Ruth, the world's greatest baseball player." I threw the ball, and Jacob reached up. It bounced off his hands. He was no Babe Ruth. We played for a while, and then Jacob said, "I have to go to work. Come with me. We can have a catch while we talk and walk." A few blocks from home, we passed a woman selling apples. Her clothes were wrinkled and shabby. I gave her my birthday dime and bought 2 apples, one for me and one for Jacob. I was glad to be rid of the dime. It reminded me of the present that I didn't get. We turned onto Webster Avenue, and there were more apple sellers. Near the next corner, I saw a large briefcase. I looked up, and there was my dad, selling apples like the others. Suddenly, I couldn't move. "Come on," Jacob said. I pointed. "Oh," he whispered. "I thought your dad had a job." "So did I. And Mom thinks so too." There were tears in my eyes as I watched the people walk past my father. I wished so much someone would buy an apple from him, but no one did. I realized how he had earned my birthday dime, and I was sorry that I had spent it. "I have to get to work," Jacob whispered. I was too dazed to know where we were going. I just followed Jacob until we came to a small building. "My dad is out of work, too," Jacob said as he got in line. "That's why I'm a newsie. Sell newspapers with me. It's fun." I didn't feel like going home, so I stayed with Jacob. We collected our papers, and he said, "Now I'll teach you how to really sell." We walked past the newsie on the corner. "Coney Island fire," he called out. 1,000 homeless. Read all about it." There were lots of people around, but I didn't see anybody buy a newspaper. Jacob and I passed other newsies calling out about the fire too. Then we walked beyond the busy streets and apartment buildings. "Where are we going?" I asked. "You'll see," said Jacob. We walked until we came to an elevated train station. People were rushing from it to the large ballpark just ahead. "We're here," Jacob said. "That's Yankee Stadium." I held up one of my newspapers and called out the headline, "Coney Island fire. Read all about it." "No," Jacob said. "No one here is interested in fires." He picked up a newspaper and looked through it. "Here it is," he said. "This is what they want." "Babe Ruth hits home run," he called out. "Read all about it. The Babe hits number 25. Read all about it." "Here, I'll take one," a man said, and gave Jacob 2 cents. "Let me see that," another man said. Jacob was smart. These people were on their way to see the Yankee game. Of course they're interested in Babe Ruth. "Babe Ruth hits home run," I called out. "Read all about it." Jacob and I quickly sold out all our papers. When we left the stadium, the coins in my pocket made a nice jingling sound. We went back to the small building and paid a penny for each paper we had sold. That left me with 25 cents. When I got home, I didn't tell Mom and Dad about the apples, but I told her about my job. She put the coins I earned in our money jar and said, "Don't say anything to your father about the newspapers. It might embarrass him to know that you're helping out." Later, Dad came home and put some coins in the jar. He took off his shoes, stretched out on the couch, and said, "I was really busy at the office today. I'm tired." I wanted to tell him he didn't have to pretend he still had his job, but I couldn't. I just looked at Dad's briefcase and wondered what he had in there. The next day, Jacob and I called out about Babe Ruth again. He had hit his 26th home run. I quickly sold my newspapers. I knew I could have sold more, if only I had some way to get them to the stadium. When I got home, I searched the basement of our building for a wagon or anything with wheels. All I found were boxes and a torn suitcase. Just before I went back upstairs, I saw Mrs. Johnson pushing her baby in a carriage. "Could I borrow that?" I asked. "Why?" she asked. "You don't have a baby." I told her about the newspapers. "I suppose so," Mrs. Johnson said, thinking. "But this would have to be a business arrangement. With my carriage, you'll make extra money, so I should make some too." She offered to rent the carriage to me for 10 cents an afternoon, and I agreed. On Monday, the front page story was about a 19-year-old boy who had robbed a telegraph office because he wanted to be arrested. He knew he would get something to eat in jail. Jacob and I didn't call out about that boy. We called out about Babe Ruth. He had won the game for the Yankees with a hit in the 12th inning. Thanks to Mrs. Johnson's carriage, I sold lots of papers. I had 80 cents to give Mom for the money jar. When Dad came home, he gave Mom a bottle of milk and a bag of apples and said, "I bought the apples from an unemployed man I passed on my way home." "Dad," I said, "that man is not unemployed. Selling apples is a job." "No, it is not," he said sharply. "It's just what you do while you wait and hope for something better." He looked upset, and I realized how important it was for him to keep his secret. On Tuesday, Jacob and I called out, "Babe Ruth collapses, read all about it." And on Wednesday, "Babe Ruth stays home." He had hurt his leg, and the doctors told him he wouldn't be able to play for 3 weeks. That night, Dad asked me to walk with him. When we were a few blocks from home, he said, "Today I saw you pushing Mrs. Johnson's baby carriage. I spoke with her, and she told me about the newspapers." "I'm just trying to help, Dad." He said, "I know." Dad held my hand firmly. We walked quietly for a while. Then Dad asked, "Were you ever on Webster Avenue?" "Once." He squeezed my hand. Tears were rolling down his cheeks. "I didn't tell Mom," I said. Dad didn't say anything after that. I didn't either. We just walked. The next day, Jacob and I called out, "Babe Ruth sits with fans. Read all about it." "Here, kid, I'll take one." A tall man gave me a $5 bill. "I'm sorry," I told him. "I can't change that." "That's okay, kid. Keep the change." I just looked at the money. I couldn't believe that anyone would pay that much for a newspaper. Jacob ran to me. "Do you know who that was?" he asked. "You sold a paper to Babe Ruth." In the few pictures I had seen of Babe Ruth, he was wearing his baseball uniform. I didn't recognize him without it. "Wow," I said. "I just sold a paper to Babe Ruth." I kept one hand in my pocket, holding on to my Babe Ruth bill. With my other hand, I sold newspapers, and I kept looking across the street toward to where Babe Ruth had gone. When all our papers were sold, I pointed to Yankee Stadium, and I told Jacob, "I'm going over there." I needed to see Babe Ruth again. I checked the prices and realized I could buy 2 tickets and still have plenty left for the money jar. So that's what I did. The stadium was noisy. Jacob and I walked through a short tunnel, and I saw a large baseball field. Babe Ruth was in the Yankees dugout with his teammates. When the game started, he stayed there. I guess his leg still hurt. I tried to watch everything: the pitcher, the catcher, the batter, the players on the field, and Babe Ruth. Near the end of the game, with the score tied, the Yankees catcher didn't come up to bat. Out came Babe Ruth. Everyone shouted and waved. I think I cheered the loudest. "He paid for my tickets," I told the man next to us. "He gave me $5 so I could see the game." The man smiled. I think the Red Sox pitcher was afraid of Babe Ruth and that he would hit a home run, so he purposely threw wide of the plate 4 times and walked the Babe. We cheered again as the Babe walked slowly to first base. We knew he couldn't hit a home run every time, but at least the Babe was back. Babe Ruth was part of the 1932 Yankees. That year, they were the best team in all of baseball. He and I were a team too. His home runs helped me sell newspapers. As I left Yankee Stadium with the coins I had earned making that nice jingling sound in my pocket, I knew Dad and I were also a team. We were both working to get our family through hard times. The end. Now please remember to vote on these 2 books. Which one is your favorite? Which one will advance to the next round, to the Final Four? Right, so go vote. Please make sure you vote. Share this with your friends or any family members that you think might enjoy. And we only have a couple more left, so vote and get your book to the Final Four and see if your favorite book in this bracket will be the champion. Mr. A signing off. See you again tomorrow.